The CDC has estimated that the number of patients that are going to need anticoagulants is expected to double by 2050. Why? Why?
This should instantly set your bull detector off, is when people say, XYZ said a thing is gonna happen, but I wonder why. When people say that, but they didn't even bother to look into why somebody said XYZ is gonna happen, that should always set off huge bull detectors in your mind. Well, let's see what they actually do say. Huh, interesting. So they actually do give reasons why they believe it's gone up. The average age is increased, obesity is increased, and rates of hospitalization.
Analysis conducted over a 5-year period from 2002 to 2006.
So that estimation of the rate of DVT doubling by 2050 comes from data collected from 2001 to 2006. So there's not even hard data in that projection related to the vaccines.
Died of COVID.
100,000, 1 million people have died.
Around this time, 4 years ago, the US was reporting about 1,000 COVID deaths every day. And I remember watching those data trackers constantly because I was looking for an answer to a question that nobody had an answer to, which was...
Yes, Russia was shown to be pushing BLM stuff, correct. Anti-Hillary stuff on BLM, yeah.
How bad is this going to get? And now the global death count from the World Health Organization sits at more than 7 million people. And the CDC says that nearly 1.2 million of those happened here in the US. So where did those numbers come from? And how well do they reflect reality? Those kinds of questions are what our little YouTube channel here is designed to answer.
Cool. I think one of the reasons why foreign subversion works so well too is that you don't really have anybody that really loves America and wants to defend America. Like America can't take credit for anything right now. We hate our large corporations that have created some of the coolest things on the planet, right? Right now, social media and stuff is like ubiquitous across the globe, but we all hate Facebook. We all hate Twitter. We all hate Elon Musk. We all hate, America's advances in electronic vehicles and spaceships, right? We all hate Elon Musk. We all hate, we hate the vaccines because of mRNA and gene therapy. We hate all of our foreign policy and any of that. For different reasons on the left and right. We hate our standard of living. We all think we live in the worst economic times ever. We hate all of our major investment firms. We hate BlackRock. We hate homeowners, and we hate banks, and we hate every single thing about it. What the fuck do we even like about our country? And we hate it all. It's just, yeah, we're so if all of us are hating like 90% of our country, there is no positive ethos anymore on the American side. We're literally just surviving by a thread based on our economic organization and the institutions we have. Was there any one thing on your trip that surprised you? I assume not. Maybe. We'll go through it. I'll go through my trip day by day. Don't worry. Is that really the majority opinion? I feel like that's just the extreme sides. I don't know. I feel like everybody in general is like pretty down on America. Biden has a good ethos. He's just not the best communicator. If we had like a 50-year-old Biden or a 60-year-old Biden, God, fuck. Like listening to him talk about, we've watched this, I think, twice on stream already. Listening to Biden talk about, was it Bosnia? Like if we had the Biden with the same attitude that he has today, because Biden has a really good attitude, you know, the soul of America, trying to unite the left and right. He wants to be a government of the American people, not just one party. Biden has a good ethos, but his communication and his age and everything makes it harder to hit. If he had the same energy that he had in, I don't know, when he was in his 60s.
This resolution does not endorse the president's decision. It does not endorse Bosnia.
Wait, that's not Biden, right? Don't let the grubbers clip me. Oh, there he is.
As we should.
Committee. But Europe cannot stay united without the United States. There is no moral center in Europe. When in the last 2 centuries had the French or the British or the Germans or the Belgians or the Italians moved in a way to unify that continent, to stand up to this kind of genocide? When have they done it? And the only reason anything is happening now is because the United States of America finally is understanding her role.
Allowing us to make this announcement.
There's like a whole last speech that he gives here about intervening in this. Yeah, but if he said like that, he gets more animated even than that. But yeah, he's so old now. We need a better cheerleader. What do you think about the idea that Biden is not too old to govern, but he's too old to run a successful campaign? This feels correct. No, I think he can do all of that. He can win the election, all that shit. We just need, and it doesn't even necessarily have to come from the American president. Like it could come from other parts too, but we need like some kind of unifying positive ethos in the U.S. We just don't have it at all right now, which is bad. It's one of the big problems with the Palestinians.
So thank you to Hank Green for the assignment, and welcome to Howtown. Okay, this is the...
I recently got called a jingoist by a friend because of how distrustful I am of our adversaries, because I don't see the need to criticize the U.S. I feel like people criticize the U.S. to push their own agendas, which is strictly worse than being a jingoist, in my opinion. Do you think that the U.S. could seriously get destroyed by itself within the next 30 years? I think that the U.S. is too powerful and can roll forward in a direction, and it's not going to just fall on its own. Like, it'll be a slow tumble if it does happen, but...
Hey, Doug.
Hi, what's up?
Just wanted to ask you a question on your opinion of the West Bank.
Yeah, what about it?
Yeah, so you've been there too, so maybe you can make the argument from the Palestinian perspective a little better.
Sure.
My take on the quote unquote illegal settlements is Palestinians were offered statehood with the original 1947 partition plan.
Mm-hmm.
They were also offered statehood with the Camp David Accords. Each time they deny this, and again, they don't have, again, in the 1930s and 40s and onward, they didn't even really have a national identity. They were just living under the Ottoman Empire before the British took over. So if they wanted a statehood, they should have just agreed to the 1947 partition plan. I think we agree on that. But since they don't have a state, they rejected these offers to have a state. I don't see how the settlements in the West Bank could be considered illegal because they don't actually have any kind of statehood. And on top of that, I see a benefit to the Israeli settlements in the West Bank from a national security perspective because it's literally just being run by the PLO, which is a terrorist organization.
So there's a lot of different things to that I could go on there, but just on the one focus, the thing is that right now the status of those territories is disputed, and insofar as the status is disputed, sending in your citizens to build homes there is probably not a good thing. Now, the legality is incredibly complicated, but the morality, I think, is you just probably shouldn't be sending in your citizens to build on disputed territory.
So I could agree that it's a bit morally ambiguous, especially from an international law sort of perspective. But again, the British occupied these territories. The Ottoman Empire was defeated. These people didn't have an actual nationality. They were offered their own state.
Sure,
then
but none of that is
decided.
None of that is relevant out here. The issue you're running into, not you personally, I'm sorry. The issue that's being run into is that, like, well, let's say all that was true, okay? Palestinians fucked up. They should have accepted, whatever, all these deals in the past. They should have. And now they don't have a state. Well, what are they then? Because if Israel wants to say, well, you guys never had a state, so now you're all part of Israel. Well, they don't want to make them part of Israel because they don't want to let them vote.
I know.
So it can't be that, well, we're building here because we believe that there is no state over there. It's like, well, then what is it? Because then you're occupying them. Or if you're not occupying them, then it's a state and it's apartheid because you're not giving them voting rights. So it has to be...
Yeah, I would agree Israel should have just taken over those territories. After the War of Independence, they should have just taken over Gaza and the West Bank.
Well, but they couldn't support the demographics. They would have to have transferred all of those people out of there from every single territory.
What do you mean?
If Israel there weren't enough Jews living there to support a democratic state, if they would have taken over all that territory and absorbed all those citizens into their country.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why in the beginning, that's why they only invaded up to what they did. That was always a concern for Israel, yeah.
Right. Okay, I see what you're saying. So the argument against the settlements in the West Bank is Israel has this sort of ambiguous position where they're refusing to incorporate the West Bank into Israel, but they're also not recognizing their statehood.
Kind of, yeah. You're basically, they're living in both worlds where they're saying that, they want the benefits of both. Well, their occupied territory is not part of our state, so of course the people there aren't going to be citizens to vote, but we own it enough to where we can send our citizens out there, and our legal system will extend to those citizens, and those citizens will pay taxes and vote for our elections, but they're going to go live out in those occupied territories. You can't, having it both ways is not working, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay, that changes my perspective a little bit. What I would say is Israel probably should just fully occupy the West Bank at this point then.
By occupy, you mean annex?
No, just so I would say give everybody in the West Bank Israeli citizenship and just have more Israeli settlements in the area.
Oh yeah. The
And if
issue
they
though
have
is
to deal
that
with the
Israel
if they
can't
have to
support
deal with the
Israel doesn't have the demographic majority. Remember, Israel wants to create or protect the Jewish character of the state because in their opinion, if it shifts over to an Arab majority state, they're going to lose the ability to have a to have a Jewish country. That's their biggest fear. So if they were to annex that territory and the Gaza Strip proper, then that would mean that that they would feel they'd be a demographic minority and they wouldn't be able to sustain their Jewish democracy, essentially.
Okay, with that in mind, I understand Israel's kind of difficult position. I would say the settlements in the West Bank are still probably morally acceptable, if not legally acceptable, because again, Palestinians don't have statehood and they keep rejecting these land for peace deals.
That's fine,
So
but the issue is just that I don't know there's a world where you can continue to expand the settlements without formally owning the territory. Like if you were to be in a war with somebody, then you temporarily occupy.
Well, they do though, don't they?
They do what?
Well, they do own the
expand.
territory in the occupied areas.
Well, they don't know because remember they don't want it because of all the Palestinians that live there. They don't want it. Because if they were to go out and say, okay, fine, yes, it's part of our country, then everybody's like eyes are looking at it like, okay, well, why aren't those people allowed to vote? Like, okay, well, fuck. The only reason those people don't vote is because they're not actually part of our country. So they
right, but
yeah.
I'm saying in the Israeli occupied territories.
Yeah, but you don't want occupied territory. Occupation should be like a matter of like days, weeks, or months, not 75 years or whatever, right? You can't occupy things like indefinitely and then start building there because now you're like everything's like getting fucked.
Right. So I'm just. What are the demographics in the occupied territories? Is it majority Arab?
3 million. Yep.
I think in the West Bank, I think it's 3 million
It's
Palestinians.
around 3 million,
and the Gaza Strip, it's about
Israelis.
Yeah, and the Gaza Strip's about 2 million. Yeah.
No, but I mean, like, I know the total area of the West Bank, but in the Israeli occupied territories, is it majority Arab?
The entire West Bank is considered an occupied territory.
Right.
Are you talking about like the small villages in Area C?
Or no, wait. What was your question more specifically? Vegan again?
Yeah. So there are areas of the West Bank that aren't occupied by Israel.
Kind of.
Which is Area A.
Well, kind of. Hold on. So in 93 under the Oslo Accords, and then in 95 and onwards, they started to divide up the territory into Area C, which is theoretically is supposed to be all Israeli citizens living there. And then there's Area A, which are the major Palestinian cities and villages. And then Area B is kind of like these in-betweens to go from A to A. However, just because it's divided up that way, the Palestinian Authority is granted sole like policing powers and administrative powers to Area A cities, but the whole of the West Bank, Area A, B, and C, are all still considered occupied territories because the IDF can go into any of these villages at any point in time for raids, and all of the exports and everything and imports into the West Bank are still controlled exclusively by the state of Israel. Area A, if you live in one of these cities, you don't have a right to get a passport by Palestine, by the PA, and like go and leave as you please. You still have to go through Israeli borders and checkpoints. They completely surround them and still, yeah.
Okay. So what do you think of this take? Israel has a demographic issue in these regions because they want to maintain, Israeli sovereignty. So absorbing all of these Palestinian civilians, which are like, many of them are crazy Islamic jihadists. Some of them are more moderate, but they still support this like river to the sea bullshit. The Palestinian Authority in the West Bank is controlled by the PLO. So it's kind of a danger incorporating all of these people into as Israeli citizens or part of Israel. I don't even know if it would be possible because the PLO would probably like launch attacks and they'd have to have like some other small-scale war in the West Bank. So, for the time being, don't you think it's like reasonable for Israel to maybe have this intention of having some sort of regime change in the West Bank, where the PLO no longer has power and control? They kind of try to get a more moderate government in the area.
Well, you have to. I think that there's, without diving too much into every single issue, the PLO, and then by extension of that, the PA is like decently moderate. There aren't like these huge widespread terror attacks that come from the West Bank into Israel anymore. It doesn't really happen.
I know they're trying to become more moderate, but
no, not trying to. They are. They're way more moderate.
Well, they certainly are more moderate than Hamas.
Yes.
I would agree with that. But like again, I'm still hearing stories of the PLO telling imams in the area to like tell people of this Islamic prophecy that all Jews are going to be killed soon.
That may or may not.
Rocks and trees are gonna.
That may or may not be the case, but I think the PLO is theoretically it's supposed to be a secular. Well, no. Yeah, right. Fatah. I don't know if the whole of the PLO is considered secular.
They're more so secular, but
yeah.
they're still like Islamic.
Sure.
Like fundamentalist ideas in it.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. But the in terms of like what the PLO supports and in terms of what comes from the West Bank, you don't really see like this radical jihadist stuff. Like there are issues that crop up in areas on the West Bank, but right now it's theorized that a lot of that is just supported by Hamas. So So I don't. The PA is a trillion times better than Hamas. I don't think there needs to be. We don't need a regime change from the PA. Like there are huge improvements even in the PA over the past 30 years, such that that's not an issue. I don't believe for the West Bank.
I think it's fair to say they're also just better for Israel when you're talking in that regard.
Sure.
So, like the PS still fucks over Palestinians.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe.
Okay. Well, this has changed my perspective a little bit. I would think Israel should try to move for another land for peace deal. Like, do you think if Israel made the same offer with the Camp David Accord, where Palestinians would get like 90% of the West Bank, you think that the Palestinian Authority would actually agree to something like that?
I think it would. Or go ahead, you can give if you want.
I would say the PA wouldn't really agree to any peace deal because they're benefiting off the status quo.
Yeah,
I think you would need a strong negotiator on the Israeli side, and I think that I think you would need a deal that was at least as good as the deal that was presented in 2008.
Yeah, because I've heard this argument too that a lot of the both Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, they don't want to make these land for peace deals because it will threaten their authority and the amount of money they can possibly make because of the billions of dollars they basically funnel out of all these international aid systems.
There might be some corruption in things like the PA, but I don't know if that's I don't know if that's like the main reason why they wouldn't necessarily accept these deals. I would say that probably step one, as uncomfortable as it is, step one is there probably needs to be elections again before negotiations can happen. Because for the Palestinians that are politically minded, the idea that you're being represented by a dictator who has almost no support from the Palestinian people,
right?
Unless he comes out with a miracle deal or something, is probably not going to be good.
So that's another problem too, because Israel would want a moderate leader in both the West Bank and Gaza. Like if they were to run another election, would a Hamas sympathizer or a pro-Hamas leader win an election in the West Bank?
It's hard to say, but Israel can't choose the leader that they negotiate
I know.
with. You have to let those people...
Well, I know, but I'm just saying, if they were to run another election, would it be suspected that the new elected leader would be basically Hamas?
Depends on Depends on who you
I wouldn't
ask.
say exactly Hamas. I would say someone that at least supports some sort of resistance against Israel. You cannot have you're not gonna vote someone in who does not support resistance against Israel in some shape or way or form.
Yeah.
Right. And that would probably be another roadblock to a peace deal because the leader doesn't want to seem like a guy who cucks to Israel.
Yeah, maybe, but then Israel has to offer a deal that makes him not seem like a cuck, right? There has to be some kind of negotiation or some kind of transition that makes it so that it doesn't seem like Israel is dishonoring or acting in bad faith in accordance with whatever they agree with. So, but, yeah.
Okay, well, interesting. Thanks for the talk. I was kind of looking at some of this shit on stream and debating with some people in chat and stuff. So
Okay.
it's got me some more things to think about. Thanks for talking.
Be careful.
And be nice to cats and other animals.
Think about it.
All right,
It's nice
take
to
care,
my
dude.
cat.
What do you want?
I chatted. No, I just hopped in because I thought there's some. Fuck, I don't recall what you said. That was about the West Bank, in regards to the territories. Because I thought he was asking specifically about demographics in Area C, Area B, and Area C. There's not that many like Arabs, but the problem is it's not the demographic of Arabs in it. It cuts off like a territory, it makes it like a fucking leopard print if you like let Israel annex Area C.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
That's the problem with it.
Yeah.
It's not the demographic. And like you cannot have a country like it's gonna look like Greece, but instead of water, it's gonna be fucking land.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's the problem with like letting Israel annex Area C. And a lot of the big ass settlements like Ariel are just you've seen like they're 30 minutes into the West Bank.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's another issue that they have to annex like Ariel, who is really deep into the West Bank, and Ariel isn't like a normal settlement anymore. It has a university, it has like synagogues, it has like governmental institutions. It's not like a simple settlement that just houses people anymore.
Yeah.
And that's about it, really.
Okay. Love you. Be careful.
Sure.
Apparently, Noam Chomsky is dead. Rip. We never did get our talk with him. Did Vosh talk to Chomsky? I think he did, didn't he? We lost it. Or am I making that up? Maybe he didn't, actually. You could have dealt the killing blow? Yeah, I don't think so. Apparently he hadn't been speaking in a while because he had a stroke or he just had health issues for like the past 8 months or something. There's no source for him dying? Oh, wait, is it bullshit? JAQing is like the far lefty thing. We remember Noam Chomsky, the intellectual and moral giant. Oh, this is saying he recovers in Brazilian hospital 1 hour ago. Oh, maybe JAQing fucked up. Or maybe they're just like celebrating him, but they're not saying he died. I don't know. Okay, never mind. Maybe he's not dead. I have no idea. Good luck.
The most direct way to track how people are dying is a death certificate. They look like this in Mexico, and they look like this in Germany. They all have this section for cause of death. And that section has 2 parts. Part 1 is supposed to capture the chain of events that led to death, starting at the top with the immediate cause. So a common sequence during the pandemic was someone would die from acute respiratory distress, which was due to pneumonia, which was due to COVID-19. And that makes COVID the underlying cause of death. Part 2 is for contributing conditions. So these are things that would have lowered that person's chance of survival, but didn't set in motion the events that led to their death. In the US, if the CDC gets a death certificate with COVID-19 in either Part 1 or Part 2 of this document, they count that as a COVID death. And if you poke around in their data, you can figure out the exact breakdown, which looks like this. 86% had COVID listed as the underlying cause of death, that's Part 1, 14% with COVID as a contributing cause in Part 2. So that's the short answer. Our death count comes from more than 1 million individual judgments made by doctors and medical examiners and coroners all over the US. Those death certificates are flowing every day to state and local records offices and then to the National Center for Health Statistics at the CDC, which counts them up. It's a pretty good system. It's been in place for many decades, but it doesn't mean that the data is perfect.
There's a new one.
COVID stuff is so boring. Can't we move on now? Well, this video is 4 days ago. And to be honest, I don't know if I'll do this or not as we prepare for the election stuff. I feel like probably the vast majority of conservative commentators should probably be out of work, should lose their jobs, should be kicked out, and other people should be brought in for the predictions and the analysis that they gave around COVID that ended up being so unbelievably and unfathomably incorrect. If we can't get people to acknowledge how wrong so many of the statements about the vaccines and the disease were, I feel like we're like doomed going forward into the future. COVID and vaccines were probably some of the most diverging from reality statements that so many people agreed with in all of world history. What were the worst predictions? Basically every single thing around what the mRNA vaccines would do, that it would cause mass deaths, mass vaccine injuries, that all of these horrible side effects, everything were being hidden, all of that was wrong. The predictions and the declarations about what states would do, that everybody was going to permanently require vaccine passports, that everybody was going to be forcibly vaccinated and it was going to be required across all countries. Those predictions were all completely wrong. Those I think those are the two biggest. There are also smaller ones that conservatives won't defend anymore about like creating it in a biolab. They all pretend they just meant it leaked from a lab. What else? I think those are the biggest ones. Fauci becoming a billionaire off the vaccines and all of that. Yeah. Like, oh, another thing would be every single thing to do with the last election as well. All the predictions made, all of the claims made, all of the, yeah. Most of the Daily Wire crowd didn't talk about perma masks and vaccine passports and stuff. Ben Shapiro was pretty okay with it. I don't think I engaged as much with Knowles, Candace Owens, or Walsh at the time. I would have to go back and see what they said. I don't know if they were as big back then as they are now. I'm not sure.
Believe that we were missing COVID diagnoses and COVID deaths.
I'm getting caught up on sort of how the vital registration system works in this country. And it's my understanding that we have maybe tens of thousands of different people who are responsible for certifying deaths. And so I'm wondering, how likely is it that they were applying sort of different standards or definitions of what a COVID death was? Can it be very subjective, or is there a really obvious way that COVID shows up when it is the underlying cause of death?
How did China manage to keep COVID deaths so incredibly low? 10 deaths to 100,000 people? You're not going to like the answer to that. So I don't know why you're asking me. One is because I'm pretty sure they were unfathomably strict on lockdowns that they had to keep doing over and over again. And two is I don't know how accurately or how much they counted or published those statistics as well. But
the epidemiology is changing so much over time. In 2020 and 2021, people would be at home in their usual state of health, whether that was healthy or having underlying chronic diseases like diabetes, heart disease, lung disease. And they would suddenly get sick and they would come in with COVID pneumonia. That's not the kind of patient that I'm seeing today. What I'm seeing is people who are really, really sick already, often with very little quality of life or life left. And so you don't really know how much, if at all, COVID is contributing sometimes.
A positive COVID test is not required for COVID to be listed as a cause of death. And a positive test doesn't obligate doctors to list COVID here. This document represents their...
Candace Owens, conservative commentator who's been vocal about her aversion to the COVID-19 vaccine, tweeted, oh, show me. I just want to see like an original thing she said. I just don't like relying on other people's summaries. Afghanistan has vaccinated approximately 2.4% of their population, source Reuters. They are a nation of about 40 million people. Why aren't they all dead? They've only recorded 7,083 deaths. Bigger question, why is the Taliban banning the vaccines? Okay. Yeah, okay. Candace Owens has probably said a lot more crazy shit. Okay, so I just wanted to see at least one tweet about it. I'm sure she said if she said this, I'm sure she said way more crazy shit about all the vaccine stuff. So you either didn't listen to it or you agreed with all of it and it passed through your mind.
Let's talk about the CDC. The CDC has estimated that the number of patients that are going to need anticoagulants is expected to double by 2050. So anticoagulants, that's regarding blood clotting. That's a medical term for blood clots per the CDC website. Deep vein thrombosis, which is a blood clot located in the deep vein, is usually in a leg or an arm. Or pulmonary embolisms, which is a blood clot that has traveled from a deep vein to a lung. Yeah, they're just expecting that all to double by 2050. Why? I'll ask a question and not give you an answer. Why are we...
After Biden gets reelected, should he pardon Trump? Trump deserves to be in jail, but on the other hand, it would be such a power move. That's a good question. I don't know.
That all to double by 2050. Why? I'll ask a question and not give you an answer. Why are we seeing so many young people and older people get blood clots all of a sudden? This is not something that was happening. But
okay, so whoever said that in chat, when you said you watched the Daily Wire and they didn't engage in any of this, I don't know, maybe you just didn't watch them that much, or... Here's a question. The estimated number of patients needing anticoagulant. Twitter, CDC. I wonder if they literally say why, if you actually read or listen to the thing. When was this tweet? September 20th, 2022. Fuck. Do we not have access to the webinar? If it's on YouTube somewhere. Public webinar series on blood disorders, CDC. This tweet right here was amplified by Candace Owens.
By 2050, so anticoagulants, that's regarding...
This is a YouTube short that has 230,000 views. I don't know if her main episode that referenced this, I don't know how many views that episode had, probably hundreds of thousands more, or maybe more than 1 million, because I think her individual
All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Episodes get quite a bit. Maybe more than 1 million, maybe more than 500,000. I don't know what reels or tweets that she made about this.
Let's talk about the CDC.
But I do know that we could probably say easily over 1 million people heard her say this line. The actual seminar itself that was posted has 696 views. Okay. So nobody's listened to this, but, you know, let's go. This seminar was posted on September 22nd, and her video was published on September 22nd. Okay. Right now, I'm sorry, to be clear, just real quick, what I'm trying to do here, I'm sorry, I need to verbalize this thought process more. I'm not looking for something that shows that she's right or wrong, okay? That's not what I'm looking for. What I don't like, and this should instantly set your bullshit detector off, is when people say, XYZ said a thing is going to happen, but I wonder why. When people say that, but they didn't even bother to look into why somebody said XYZ is going to happen, that should always set off huge bullshit detectors in your mind.
Let's talk about the CDC. The CDC
so when somebody says,
has estimated that the number of patients that are going to need anticoagulants is expected to double by 2050. So anticoagulants, that's regarding blood clotting. That's a medical term for blood clot. Is usually in a leg or an arm, or pulmonary embolisms, which is a blood clot that has traveled from a deep vein to a lung. Yeah, they're just expecting that all to double by 2050. Why?
this is the number one thing that JAQ offers do, just asking question people when they say, well, why is this? Why is that? It's like, well, I don't know. Have you looked into it? You're the communicator. You're the influencer. You're the journalist, right? This is what you get paid to do. So tell me why. What did they say?
Why? I'll ask a question and not give you an answer. Why are we seeing so many young people and older people get blood clots all of a sudden? This is not something that was happening, but they certainly are going to gaslight you into thinking that it is happening.
So, okay. Well, let's see what they actually do say. Or we won't watch all this. We'll try to skip through to find out why they think it might be an increase. But
hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, the Public Health Webinar Series on Blood Disorders. This webinar is presented by the Division of Blood Disorders at the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, also known as the CDC. I'm Dr. Caroline Cromwell, and I'm Assistant Professor of Medicine at the ICANN School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. I'm also Medical Director of Thrombosis Services Program at Mount Sinai Health System in New York City.
Somebody say go 6 minutes.
So I want to start by framing the magnitude of two major issues. The first one is the number of patients that are experiencing VTE, and the second is the number of patients that are experiencing harm from anticoagulants.
So here's the first issue now, right? So when we do a little bit of digging, here's the first issue where you realize, oh, Candace Owens is a hack that doesn't deserve to get a single dollar for her job. So one is, assuming I'm reading this correctly and I'm not up, well, it looks like blood clots have been rising for decades. Interesting. So doesn't look like we got the vaccine and now blood clots are rising. It looks like, at least from what my layman's eyes can tell on these graphs here, from 1985, we've seen an increase in venous thromboembolisms, deep vein thrombosis alone, and pulmonary embolisms. Seems to be the case that all of these things have been increasing. Huh, interesting. So already a huge fuck up to the idea that, oh, it must be caused by vaccines, right? Or at least this doesn't seem to support that, right? But okay, we'll keep going.
So let's start with VTE. And what I'm showing you here on the left, this is population-based surveillance data from the Worcester VTE study that was conducted over a 25-year period in Massachusetts. And what the investigators found in this analysis, that the incidence of venous thromboembolism, that is new cases, essentially doubled during the study period. Now, they appropriately acknowledged that some of this was due to increased diagnosis, due to non-invasive imaging and more PE events being found. But they also acknowledged that there were other significant contributing factors like age, obesity, and increasing rates of hospitalization.
Huh, interesting. So they actually do give reasons why they believe it's gone up. The average age is increased, obesity is increased, and rates of hospitalization. I believe, I'm drawing on layman's knowledge here, but if you spend long periods of time like sitting down or immobilized, I think that especially if you are old and obese, like if those other two risk factors are increasing, then you can increase the likelihood of you developing, I think it's DVT specifically, blood clots. So interesting. But, so it seems like they actually do posit some reasons for why these might be increasing. Huh.
Is driving this increase in VTE incidence. On the right, what you're seeing is a retrospective claims analysis conducted over a 5-year period from 2002 to 2006. And in this analysis, the investigators found that the prevalence of VTE, that is all existing cases at any given point in time, increased by 33% during the study period. And then when they applied U.S. Census estimates and projected out, this suggests that the prevalence of VTE is going to at least double by the year 2050. So,
crazy. So that's so interesting. So they're using projections from data that, when was the last hard data they collected for that? 1 second.
Given point in time, increased in 2006. On the right, what you're seeing is a retrospective claims analysis conducted over a 5-year period from 2002 to 2006.
So that estimation of the rate of DVT doubling by 2050 comes from data collected from 2001 to 2006. So there's not even hard data in that projection related to the vaccines. So
And in this analysis, the investigators found that the prevalence of VTE, that is all existing cases at any given point in time, increased by 33% during the study period. And then when they applied U.S. Census estimates and projected out, this suggests that the prevalence of VTE is going to at least double by the year 2050. So clearly, VTE is and will continue to be a major public health burden, and we need more effort and resources and dedicated attention to primary prevention of VTE and also optimized management of VTE to prevent secondary recurrence. Okay, second major issue.
Crazy. So isn't it crazy that we saw a tweet, we found the seminar, and then we watched it, and we only had to get 8 minutes in to answer the question that Candace Owens is getting paid 7 figures a year to posit to you rhetorically. Isn't that crazy?
Let's talk about the CDC. The CDC has estimated that the number of patients that are going to need...
This is why I say this, and I don't know if people think I'm exaggerating or not. This is why I say, if you're just willing to read a full article or watch a video, you're not going to be informed more than 90% of the population. You're going to be informed more than 90% of, like, presenters. Also, this is why alternative media is just as fucking trash as mainstream media is, right? Candace Owens doesn't deserve to get paid anything for this hack work. Right? She didn't even do any homework. She didn't do anything here. She didn't even try to find the seminar. And if she did, she didn't even listen to at least 10 minutes of it, 8 minutes of it to figure out like, oh, I wonder why they are projecting these things. Because if she did, she'd realize that every single thing that she says in this video is so unbelievably fucking wrong. It's embarrassing, right?
The anticoagulant.
But there's no accountability here. Which I guess, funnily enough, I guess it's funny. This loops right back into what I kind of started this whole fucking rant with, is that conservatives said a whole bunch of crazy things about vaccines and COVID that they'll never be held accountable for. And I think they should. I think a lot of people should lose their jobs and shit. Not like the government should fire them or corporate, but like people just shouldn't support them anymore. It's crazy that you guys settle for this on the right. I mean, the far left people make stupid claims too, but...
is expected to double by 2050. So anticoagulants, that's regarding blood clotting. That's a medical term for blood clots per the CDC website. Deep vein thrombosis, which is a blood clot located in the deep vein, is usually in a leg or an arm. Or pulmonary embolisms, which is a blood clot that has traveled from a deep vein to a lung. Yeah, they're just expecting that all to double by 2050. Why? Why? I'll ask the question, not give you an answer. Why are we seeing so many young people and older people get blood clots all of a sudden? This is not something that was happening, but they certainly are going to gaslight you into thinking that it is happening.
Huh. Crazy. Who's gaslighting who? She'd watch Candace on the recent Piers Morgan, where she defended her claim that the French president's wife is a trans woman. Yeah, anyway. Yeah, fuck all these people. This is disgusting. This is disgusting behavior, right? It's disgusting and it's literally destroying our country. Or destroying our world, I guess, because everybody's being affected by stupid shit like this. Anyway, sorry, back to this.
Best medical judgment. And that can be tricky with coronavirus because it doesn't just attack the lungs, it can also attack other organs, and it can cause blood clots and strokes and heart attacks. And some of those cases can be harder calls to make.
Is this person an asymptomatic COVID positive who happens to be having a heart attack, which is a very common condition? Or is this somebody where COVID caused a heart attack? And I think, we don't have a way to figure that out.
Sources say Trump and his aides have questioned whether the coronavirus death toll is being overcounted.
These death certifiers don't always have all the information they want, and it's a matter of, are you going to jump from that uncertainty to conspiracy or not?
Based on how death certificates are being filled out, you can be certain the number is substantially lower than what we are being told. Based on inaccurate, incomplete data.
My understanding is that when you look at excess death counts, I think that the general feeling is that COVID deaths were undercounted. Now, you might believe that excess deaths are caused by vaccines or whatever, but I mean, there's no data to support that, so I don't even know how to deal with that. Was this in Nature? I believe that right now, in terms of research, I think the general consensus is that we've probably undercounted COVID deaths in the United States. I don't know about worldwide, but I believe in the United States. There's a big journal that published. Maybe it was New England Journal of Medicine, or maybe I thought it was in Nature. School of Public Health University of Pennsylvania. This is a school. Oh, I don't know. You can go look for this. I don't have time to look up every single fucking state right now.
People are being terrorized by fearmongers into relinquishing cherished freedoms.
Part of the reason I am interested is that like it's easy to say here's the number, and then it's also easy to say that number's fake, because here's a little bit of context about how we do this. But if you get like 8 minutes of context, 12 minutes of context, then suddenly you're like, oh, the world is complicated, and a lot of.
When somebody is trying to communicate an idea to you, and this is what I try to do this with foreign policy. I try to do this with everything I do. When somebody's trying to communicate an idea, it's not enough to give you a thing and then a problem, and then to say this will cause an outcome. You need to link all of these things together. That's why when I say that, like, oh, well, like, what would be an example of this? I'm trying to think of a non-foreign policy example. If somebody says something like if you require more seatbelts, it's going to cause people to drive less safe or whatever. And then you might say, like, well, it could do it because the seatbelt is annoying as fuck. You need that last piece, which is like showing that, like, well, here in these places where they've required more seatbelts, or in here where they looked at this in a study, whatever, the people with the seatbelts actually did get into more accidents. You need to have that final outcome that's actually linked, instead of just like throwing up two pieces of information and then just assuming the conclusion and like never actually providing evidence for it. You have to be able to do that.
People died of COVID.
Fortunately, there is another method that doesn't rely on all of these individual judgments happening about the cause of death, and that's called excess mortality. The way it works is that
she's going to go into excess mortality. Okay. I don't know what Howtown is also.
Ignore the cause of death section and just count the death certificates, regardless of the cause. And by doing that, you can get a broader view of the pandemic's true death toll. Can you explain at the most basic level what an excess death is?
Yes. So simply put, it's the number of deaths beyond what you would expect in a normal year.
I plotted here the deaths in the US by year from any cause. And sort of right away, you see this jump in 2020 and 2021. You want to know how many of those are excess deaths. Why can't you just compare them to the 2019 levels?
So the reason why you can't just compare them to 2019 is that, as you see, there is a slight increase over time in how many people die in America. So you adjust a bit for that, so you can go forward in time, and then you have your baseline.
I feel like this music is a bit too loud.
So you're basically saying this is the amount of deaths we think the US would have seen if the pandemic didn't happen. And then the part that sticks out the top is the excess. And you compared this excess to the kind of reported COVID death count. What did you find there?
Generally, what I found was that they tended to be pretty well matched, but there was more excess deaths than there were COVID deaths. And there was also more excess deaths in the beginning compared to COVID deaths. So essentially, testing got better over time, and that meant that more people who died with COVID or because of COVID got captured in the COVID death toll.
If the US had been overcounting COVID deaths by a large amount, what would you have expected to see on a chart like this?
Well, if they were overcounting, then very simply, there wouldn't be that top blue area. So you can assess their claim that it's killing people who would have died anyway. And what you see is that, no, it's killing a vastly higher number of people.
This is how we know that during these 4 years, around 1.3 million...
Jesus. That one, like, 1 second shot that they did. How much did it print out for that?
People.
Was it like 4 different pages they printed? Nice. Good job.
This is how we know that during these 4 years, around 1.3 million more people died in the US than normal. Now, not all of those were COVID infections. We also saw increases in drug overdoses, in murders. People weren't being treated for other health conditions. But it was mostly COVID. And you can see that if you look at excess deaths by week instead of by year. There's a seasonal pattern in the expected baseline level of mortality because more people tend to die in the wintertime. And then when we add in the actual amount of deaths that happened, we see that the excess came in waves that align really closely with the reported COVID deaths. So this increases our confidence that we lost more than 1 million Americans to the virus. Then there's around 200,000 additional excess deaths that did not have COVID on the death certificate. And over on our Patreon, we'll dig into some recent research on those unexplained excess deaths. But I'll move on for now, because if you can estimate excess mortality for one country, couldn't you just do it for all of them?
The immediate response to this from anti-vaxxers is that the excess deaths are from the vaccines, not the virus. How would you respond? There's no data for that. And you would see that. That would pop up somewhere. And that's not even usually the argument they use. What they'll say is, well, it's because people were killing themselves more and because they weren't able to go to the gym, which is also fucking retarded. There's no data for either of those, so...
That's what the economists and other groups have tried. And they all say that the global death toll is probably several times higher than the official count. But as you'll see in a second, when it comes to getting an exact global number, we're now venturing onto much shakier ground. You know, the WHO has this COVID-19 dashboard that lists death totals for pretty much every country. And I'm curious, where did that data come from?
They collected from reported deaths that occur in hospitals or confirmed COVID deaths. But the world is actually quite poor at counting its dead.
I had never thought about this before, so I was surprised to learn that they think 40% of deaths that happen globally are not registered. Some of the biggest countries in the world have limited capacity to certify their deaths, because a lot of those deaths happen at home and in rural areas where families handle things themselves. So when a country doesn't have good data on COVID deaths, and they also don't have good data on total deaths, the other thing to try is to look at a sample of deaths.
The Indian cell phone penetrance is quite high, but now 80% of the population has access to cell phone. And importantly, the response rates are actually quite good. Unlike in the US, where most people, I mean, you're lucky if you get a 2 to 4% response rate to a phone call. In India, for this particular survey, it was about 57%.
Damn.
Even in those rural areas?
Even in the rural areas, yeah.
Indians love telephone poles.
And from that, the questions were pretty simple. Well, has there been a death in your house and when?
And so these phone calls were going out throughout the pandemic? It's kind of a continuous...
Well, credit goes to Yashwant Desmukh, who runs a very credible polling company called C-Voter. And he made the decision during the pandemic to keep the polling operations going. And then we compared the deaths by date, and that then leads to the estimate of 3 million or so deaths. So we think the Indian government has been underreporting COVID deaths by a factor of 6 or 7.
That survey tells us a lot more about what happened in India, but we don't have that for all of the other countries. And so to get to these global estimates, the researchers turned to statistical modeling. For The Economist, that meant training a machine learning model to predict excess deaths based on the patterns in the countries where they were known. By the end of 2022, their model produced an estimate of 21 million global excess deaths, with a confidence interval from 16 million to 28 million. Can you explain, what is the right way to interpret a confidence interval?
We are about 95% confident that the true value is within this range, if our model is right. We're talking enormous ranges here, and some might say, well, like, what's the point of that? So I think some information is way better than no information. And sadly, what we've had for a long time and what a lot of people have relied on is information that's actually worse than no information, because it is saying that, well, in the countries which can't afford to test or don't have good record keeping, there's no pandemic.
Oh yeah, we just saw that with the Afghanistan thing, right? Nobody's died in Afghanistan from COVID.
I think that we have this idea that we know everything about the world, and that like there's a problem when we don't, and like there is a problem when we don't. But in fact, we just don't, like, it's hard to know stuff.
It's hard to know stuff. I mean, we're like, think about the challenge of this. There's, 8 billion people in all sorts of circumstances all over this planet. And in the US, the way that we kind of ensure people enter the system is that you actually need a death certificate to close people's accounts and to sort out their insurance and their inheritance and to, even like get someone cremated.
That is also fascinating. Like, the reason we have death data is because there are a bunch of systems that need, like, in order to do the things that you need to do upon a person's death, whether that's burial or cremation or bank account stuff, you actually do have to do the thing.
The pandemic amplified so many of our existing inequalities. You could see it in who could afford to isolate, who was vulnerable, how the vaccines and treatments rolled out, but also this big inequality in paperwork, where countries that are rich in data can bring their public health problems into focus and see if interventions are working, while much of the rest of the world is a blur.
Globally, it's a blur, which is not surprising, having some connection to how healthcare works globally, which is a big mess, and only gets better one day at a time through the efforts of lots of individual humans.
There's more on Patreon. Yeah, you alluded to some of the skepticism of these numbers, and it seems like a lot of that was political. And one that I heard a lot was that the doctors were greedy and they somehow got more money if they said that someone died of COVID. I don't know how that would work, or what's the real deal?
Damn. Would you attribute part of the rise in ADHD and gender dysphoria diagnoses to advances in medical knowledge and improved diagnostic criteria and increased awareness among healthcare professionals and the public? Why would you group gender dysphoria and ADHD together? What? I don't know. I haven't looked into the rise of those diagnoses at all, so I don't know at all. According to CDC reports, 2020 is working out to be the lowest flu death season of the decade. 20,000 flu deaths took place before COVID-19 in January, and then only 4,000 deaths thereafter. To give you context, 80,000 Americans died of the flu in 2019. It's a miracle. Hold on. What a disingenuous statement. First of all, 80,000 is a lot. If it was 80,000 in 2019, I thought it was like 65. But if it was, that's like the worst flu death year ever. I'm pretty sure the average is around like 30 to 40,000. What? Oh, hold on. But we can check. Flu death history USA. Number of influenza deaths from 2010 to 2023. 36,000, 12,000, 42,000, 37,000, 51,000, 22,000, 38,000, 51,000, 27,000, 25,000. Where the fuck did she get 80,000 in 2019? This says 25,000. But this is just a Statista graph. I don't know, maybe that's some bullshit. Source, CDC. They said 22,000. These look like the same numbers. Where the fuck does she get that number from? 80,000 deaths? Let's see what the CDC says. For 2019, the CDC says 27,000 from 2018 to 2019, or 25,000 from 2019 to 2020. From 2021, is there not an estimate for 2020? In 2021, they estimated 4,900. That's the current estimate. I don't remember how much of 2021 was on lockdowns or whatever. What's the right column? The right column is the, what do you call it? Your confidence interval is a range of values. What do you call that range of values? It's, oh, your confidence interval. Sorry. Okay. True. Oh, fuck. Wait, does anybody have a free... I forgot you had to actually buy this sometimes. Wait, hold on. So what do these numbers really show? This shows you the guess for what they think the deaths were for each season, the estimation. And then this is the interval they give for, they're 95% sure that the value falls between that interval. The upper bound for 2019 was 78,000. So she's, why would you take the upper bound of a confidence interval? Good one. Wait, hold on. Fuck. Which Windows 11 version would you use? Is there a difference between Pro and Home? I guess Pro. No, Home. To show the most extreme case? No, shut the fuck up. Why would you apply that level of charitability here? That's bullshit. You would say that. The estimation, you would say the estimation on the higher end was 80,000. That's what you would say. You wouldn't just present that number as though it's like a fact and then not even communicate that you're giving the upper bound of a confidence interval. That's bullshit. Get the fuck out of here. That's not even being charitable. That's just letting somebody be wrong. Just get Pro. There's no point in getting Home. Okay, never mind. Wait, get Pro. Look at the fact checker. See why. The CDC has not stopped reporting flu deaths, and this season's numbers are typical. She made this in 2020. I don't know if 2020's numbers were typical or not, but I think you're misunderstanding what a confidence interval is. It is not a 95% chance that the true population mean falls within that interval. Wait, are you sure? I thought it meant that there's a 95% chance. Well, I'm just about to repeat what I just said. Is an estimate of the possible values of a population mean. The keyword here being an estimate, just as with any statistic, upper and lower bounds of confidence interval vary from sample to sample. For 95% sample might be between 2 and 5, but for another random sample between 1 and 4. Some of the intervals calculated from these random samples will contain the true population mean, and some will not. A level 9 calculated from these random samples will contain the true population mean. In other words, if you conduct your study 100 times, you would produce 100 different confidence intervals. We would expect that 95 out of those 100 confidence intervals will contain the true population mean. What? I don't understand what the difference is meaningfully between what I just said. During the course of conducting your analyses and writing your results, your mentor, committee member, or another agreement to include confidence intervals, your report include. Okay. Reporting confidence intervals is all well and good, but it's important to understand what they are if you do include them in your results. Interestingly, confidence intervals are among the most commonly misunderstood concepts of statistics. These misconceptions have even been demonstrated by scientific research. For example, Hoekstra and colleagues conducted a study from 2015 showing that individuals with varying levels of statistics expertise, from students to expert researchers, frequently endorsed false statements about confidence intervals. This suggests that misconceptions are common not only among statistics novices, but experienced researchers as well. Some of the most common misconceptions about confidence intervals are: there's a 95% chance that the true population mean falls within the confidence interval. This mean will fall within the confidence interval 95% of the time. So what exactly is a confidence interval? Confidence interval is an estimate of the possible values of a population mean. The keyword here being estimate. An estimate of the possible values. Just as with any statistic estimated from a sample, the upper and lower bounds of the confidence interval will vary from sample to sample. For a given population, a 95% confidence interval from one random sample might be between 2 and 5, but for another random sample, it might be between 1 and 4. Some of the intervals calculated from these random samples will contain the true population mean, and some will not. These random samples. I don't know. Okay. That's adding that onto the list of things to do. Okay. Stats 101. I'm still not sure. Is that chart you had up is the main explanation for less flu deaths in 2021 to 2022, just all the distancing and masking and general anti-COVID measures. That's my understanding, is that all of the anti-COVID measures caused a severe reduction in the amount of influenza cases. That's my understanding. NVIDIA is now the world's most valuable company, passing Microsoft. Oh shit, wait. Should I sell my... I totally forgot I bought this before I left. Hold on. Jesus. Okay, I'm pretty sure like the week before I left. Wait, how do I see my order history? Summary of recent transactions. 5/29. Is that 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago. Okay, 3 weeks ago, I bought $500,000 of NVIDIA stock, and now it's worth $593,000. So I made about $100,000 of this stock in 3 weeks. I feel like I should just sell this. I feel like that's free money. Why didn't you tell us to buy? I told you to buy. You're lying? I am. I just 100x'd all the numbers. Oh, I don't think this tells you the buy date on this. Oh, it'd be under the cost summary basis. I feel like this is the quickest, easiest money I've ever made in life. Are you doing market trades? Yeah, of course. What do you mean? Genuine question, what should we be back? Bro, don't take stock advice from me. I just fucking meme on this shit, okay? Don't. If anybody's giving stock advice for free, it's probably not that great. Hi, honey boo boo. I feel like if I hold on to this, I feel like it's just going to sell. It's going to fall a lot. I don't even know. I don't know. Fuck it. Might not just sell when it stops rising. We'll see. Have you ever lost money on a stock you publicly talked about buying? No, I haven't. But I've only made like 4 or 5 big trades. But also, it's like it's easy to get lucky over a small period of time. Okay, trust me. Don't take my stock advice. But if you do, you're probably gonna make millions. All right. RFK Jr.'s latest conspiracy theory is Washington backing away. Why did I get linked to this? This was on July 17th. Don't think I care. Oh, this is all linked during the RFK stuff. RFK flew to Samoa and convinced them that measles vaccines were killing children. Oh, we already watched this. That was kind of crazy. Nimrod, thank you for the 50 gifted subs, my dude.
We need to talk about, and we need to talk about bioweapons. The level, I know a lot now about bioweapons because I've been doing a book on it for the past 2.5 years, and you know, the technology that we now have to develop these microbes, we've put hundreds of millions of dollars into ethnically targeted microbes. The Chinese have done the same thing. In fact, COVID-19, there's an argument that it is
ethnically targeted microbes? Theoretically, I guess it could be possible, but are there really like different, what would they be, alleles or different like genetic components to different ethnicities that could be targeted for certain types of viruses? I guess like theoretically, I don't see why that would be impossible, but like in practice, is it?
Is ethnically targeted. COVID-19 attacks certain races disproportionately. The races that are most immune to COVID-19 are because of the structure of the genetic structure, genetic differentials among different races of the receptors of the ACE2 receptor. COVID-19 is targeted of the ACE2 of the receptors of the ACE2 receptor. COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and black people.
I've gone through so many COVID conspiracies. I have never heard this one before. Is this a recent one? I see this is June 16, 2024. Is the ACE2 receptor meaningfully different in Caucasians and black people? I guess they're just all one race for this. Is that true? Is there a paper, anything that talks about this? I believe the ACE2 receptor is the receptor on the outside of the cell that spike protein binds to for SARS-CoV-2. This video is a few months old. Okay. I've never heard that the ACE2 receptor is meaningfully different in just blacks and whites versus other ethnic groups.
Caucasians and black people.
Also, I like how Caucasians and black people, those are races? Caucasians and black people? Okay.
People who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese. But we don't know whether it was deliberately targeted that or not. But there are papers out there that show the racial and ethnic differential and impact to that. We do know that the Chinese are spending hundreds of millions of dollars developing ethnic bioweapons, and we are developing ethnic bioweapons. That's what all those labs in the Ukraine.
Oh, and he does the Ukraine biolabs meme. Oh, a blast from the video of one day ago. He even has those. Nice.
Are about they're collecting Russian DNA, they're collecting Chinese DNA, so that we can target people by race.
Maybe he's referring to this. Let's see. I'm sure different races and different genetic traits make you more or less likely to develop the severe disease or to contract a thing. Even different blood types, I think, can give you slightly different chances of contracting a virus and then developing a disease. But genetic variants in the alpha 2C adrenoreceptor and G protein contribute ethnic differences and cardiovascular stress responses. This doesn't stand for ACE2 receptor, does it? Is this like this is a different thing, isn't it? I don't know, I could be wrong. Physical role ACE2 is looking at hypertension, cardiac. Okay. These are not referring to the same thing, right? Alpha and then sub 2C adrenoreceptor. Shut up. This article claims he was referencing this. Oh, what you just linked me, these receptors are like neuro bullshit things, right? Receptors for neurotransmitters? That's what an adrenoceptor is, I guess, maybe? Take everything I'm saying here with many grains of salt. New insights into genetic susceptibility of COVID-19 and ACE2 and TMPRSS2 polymorphism analysis. Oh, I'm not aware of this host factor. Let me, real quick. This promotes the growth, invasion, and metastasis, or metastasis? It's metastasis, right? It's going to be like metastasis, I don't know, of prostate cancer via cell, matriptase activation, and extracellular matrix disruption. what is this? Is a cell surface protein primarily expressed by endothelial cells across the respiratory and digestive tracts. Okay, and where is ACE2 normally expressed? I don't even fucking know. Acts as a physiological counterbalancing, providing homeostatic regulation of circulating angio blah 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 blah. I don't even know. Oh, attached to the membrane of the cells. Of mainly enterocytes of the small intestine, the duodenum, proximal tubular cells of the kidneys, glandular cells of the gallbladder, as well as Sertoli cells and Leydig cells of the testes. Oh, I'm guessing then that this host factor then is probably more important. This TMPRSS2, since this is a respiratory disease that can be transmitted more easily from coughing. That'd be my guess, right? No. Wait, TMR or TMP, hold on. This alters the spike protein so that it can enter the cell via ACE2. Yes, that is correct. Wow. Transmembrane protease, serine-2, tease me baby, has been identified as key host cell factor for viral entry and pathogenesis of SARS-CoV-2. Specifically, this proteolytically processes the spike protein, enabling virus host membrane fusion and infection of the airways. A recombinant production structure, enzymatically active, characterization of mature. Holy fuck. When you say you cleave something, what does that mean? It's like opening it up or making it so it can enter the membrane? Is that what cleaving means? It cuts the spike protein to make it active. Oh yeah, you can see that because there are scissors. Okay, viruses hijack the biochemical activity of specific cell surface proteins to initially recognize the target cell and subsequently overcome the energetic barrier necessary for virus host membrane fusion. SARS-CoV-2 uses its spike protein to recognize its primary cell surface receptor, ACE2, which is highly expressed in the aerodigestive tract, liver, kidneys, and sex organs. However, to bring virus and host membranes sufficiently close for fusion, the S protein, spike protein, requires proteolytic processing at the S1, S2 cleavage sites to enable large conformational changes and expose subunit 2 harboring the matured membrane fusion machinery. Transmembrane protease, serine-2, which co-localizes with ACE2 at the cell membrane, has been identified as a dominant proteolytic driver of S protein activity and SARS-CoV-2 infection in the aerodigestive tract. Jesus. Okay. It's pronounced protease. Okay. So when the virus is floating around near the cell, these things are always co-located together or tend to be. And this particular enzyme will snip up the virus. And then after it's snipped up, it floats on over to ACE2, and then it goes into the cell. So both of these components are necessary, but they're always found together. So theoretically, a variation in either of these genetically could lead to a phenotypical difference in how they process things that would make you less likely to be infected by that bullshit or whatever. Right? Okay. Jesus. Okay. Whew. Okay. We know a new thing now. We found unique genetic susceptibility across different populations in ACE2 and TMPRSS2, specifically ACE2 polymorphisms, were found to be associated with cardiovascular and pulmonary conditions by altering the angiotensin ACE2 interactions, such as P.R. in the African/African American population. Unique but prevalent polymorphisms, including these, and expression quantitative trait logos and expression quantitative trait logos and blah, blah, blah offer potential explanations for differential genetic susceptibility to COVID-19, as well as for risk factors, including those with cancer and the high-risk group of male patients. We further discussed the polymorphism of ACE2 or AT1 could guide effective treatments. Okay. I wonder, was there actually a difference in measured like infection rates? Like, I wonder how different the susceptibility would be. Whew, Jesus. Okay. But I guess if we're being as charitable as possible, this is the study that he's referencing. And in actuality, it was probably a conservative reading the headline and quoting this and then doing a tweet. And but okay. All right. But at least we know the foundation for these claims. There's apparently Robin Pisco beef. Listen, we still have to get through this. Holy shit. Wait, Merck got arrested? Okay. What is a G protein? I have absolutely no idea, but that was in that last link. G proteins are specialized proteins with the ability to bind to the nucleotides guanosine triphosphate and gusanosine diphosphate. Some G proteins, such as the signaling protein ROS, are small proteins with a single subunit. There you go. I have no idea what it does or what it means. I'm sure they're in some system and whatever, yeah. Now do angiotensin. The problem is these are things I would have to do, like just reading the definition isn't going to help me because I don't even know the words in the definition. Angiotensin is a hormone that helps regulate your blood pressure by constricting or narrowing blood vessels and triggering water and salt intake. Hormones are chemicals that coordinate functions of your body by carrying them out. Okay. Angiotensin is a hormone. There you go. Jesus. Okay, we watched this. Did this tweet get deleted? Professor Noam Chomsky has just died. I don't know if this is true. Apparently nobody else is confirming this, so it's a fucking meme, I guess.